Welcome to the Start Strong, Finish Strong podcast with Greg Weiss. In this episode, I sat down with Saurabh Thaper from Turbo, which provides innovative recruitment software, and Viddi, which provides a platform for pre-interviewing candidates. Given that it is a new platform that is increasingly used, I thought it was going to be helpful to hear from Saurabh about Viddi in particular. Let's get into it. Hi there and welcome to the Start Strong, Finish Strong podcast with Greg Weiss. And today I'm delighted to have in my Zoom room with me a guy that I have a lot of time for, a guy called Saurabh Thaper. And Saurabh is the director of a business that has two platforms, one being an applicant tracking system called Turbo, and the other being Viddi, which is a pre-interview video platform. Welcome to the show, Saurabh.
Thanks, Greg. Great to be on board.
Thank you. So Saurabh, I just was curious, just a brief snapshot. How did you get into the recruitment and applicant tracking system and pre-interview business?
Yeah, so a bit of an unusual journey. I started off, finished university and moved into finance, and was working in Sydney, I think it was about 14 years. You know, during that time, I always had a passion for working with people, working with tech, and at some stage, you know, it was always at the back of my mind that I wanted to have the ownership of, you know, either running a business or something to that effect. And about 4 years ago, opportunity arose to move into the recruitment tech business, which is what Turbo is. So Turbo is an applicant tracking system. But what was really attractive is it kind of balanced those two elements I was looking for. So it was a neat fit at the time. And then also gave me an opportunity to get in the business, but then also try and develop it. So develop new product, which is what we've done with the video interviewing.
So I've seen both those platforms. That's pretty cool tech. And one of the things I wanted to do today was really help the people who are going through the interview process or applying for jobs. What is it that they're going to be expecting as technology becomes increasingly prevalent? So let's get into it a little bit about just some background around. Let's talk initially about this pre-interview software platform. What's driving the need for that?
I think if you actually look what's happened, COVID has accelerated basically every form of tech. So what we're starting to do is probably use tech, increasingly use tech in every part of our life, whether it's professionally, personally, and it's becoming more and more prevalent. So, and the recruitment sector is no different. So what's happening now is that, particularly because at the start of COVID, you had a situation where recruiters, candidates were working from home. There needed to then be a conduit to allow for that initial interaction before you move to, say, a face-to-face interview, which even at that time was difficult. So Zoom interview. So what this technology seeks to do is really allow a recruiter to pre-screen candidates by sending them a one-way interview, which will have a list of questions that the candidate needs to answer. And then the candidate can answer them in their own time via video and then upload it, thus giving the recruiter an opportunity to go through each profile, understand whether or not the candidate may or may not be the right fit for the business.
So, I mean, COVID has been such a game changer on so many different levels, and I take your point. I know that before COVID, we would coach people through Zoom, through this particular technology, and so we would find that there'd be a little bit of a dis-ease or unease around this by maybe some clients, etc. But we were ahead of the curve on that side of things, and now it's an expected thing. So I'd imagine that if we take Zoom as one small example, it is this type of technology is going to become increasingly accepted. And so it's an interesting piece. Let me ask you, just in terms of choosing a platform like this, because we've got two sides of this discussion. One being the recruiter or the employer having this at their disposal for the execution of a particular brief that they're looking to fulfill. Say if there's a vacancy. The other side is the experience of the applicant coming into this side of things. So let me ask you that if we were looking at what sort of things ought recruiters and employers consider before we start looking at the applicant candidate experience.
So I think you're exactly right. So there are probably two aspects to look at it from. So the employer and then the candidate. For the employer, I think initially it was quite clear what the benefits were. To give you an opportunity, it effectively brings a resume to life, allows you to see the individual, and then whether or not they have a skill set that might match the job that you're looking to fill. But what we actually found as well, and I guess where it's also important, comes around the candidate acceptance. And originally, if you look back even 2 years ago, the concept of a video interview, particularly a one-way video interview, was very fine. It was nascent in terms of its use in the US, but not actively used here in Australia. And then you have COVID, people start to get more and more used to Zoom, get used to Teams, and this is across all demographics. So, even people my age now, that they have no hesitation in using this kind of tech. But what it did was it allowed candidates to actually demonstrate a little bit more about themselves than what they would have been able to show on a resume, which is actually really important, particularly when you've got high volume. To be able to stand out from a crowd is becoming increasingly difficult, particularly when you've just got one source or one reference point, which is your cover letter and resume. So I think the considerations are really, you need to look at, as you said, from both perspectives. For the employer, I think probably the most important thing is, and this is in relation to any part of their business, is around communication. So whether it's before the interview or after the interview, communication is critical. So when you're forming your interview, ensuring you've got the right questions, it's relevant, it's engaging for the candidate, so you actually are able to generate or determine or get real visibility on the individual is important. It ensures then that the candidate knows that you're investing the time to actually understand them, which is important. You email them, they'll do the interview. When they finish the interview, again, I think communication is really important. So one of the challenges that we're finding is that at some point, sometimes employers don't recognize that just because you're using a technology, that basic human interaction of communication still remains. I always say that if you're any potential candidate, can be a future client, can be a future candidate, and then can also be a referral. So to ensure that they have a good experience with your business and your brand is paramount, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an interesting thing in terms of the video type of technology as well, where it does give people a sense of who you are. I'm also thinking about, I've been involved in the recruitment industry for a long time, and recently got back into it actually through the brand Solidify. And whilst that's more high end, I'm curious around when you talk about volume, just so that we actually make sure that the audience listening understands what this means. We're not talking about the high end, we're talking more volume, meaning larger numbers of people applying for the one job, or it's large numbers of roles. Is that the case?
Yeah, that's right. I think, ultimately the platform can be used however you want. I guess out of the box uses that have been applied to the tech. But in essence, you're exactly right. It is for those roles where you've got a high volume of candidate that are coming through, or you may have a number of roles. So if I had to provide some parameters around it, I would say it'd be for those roles, moving up to around your middle management is probably where it's most effective. For those high-end roles, like you said, there's, from a recruiter's perspective, you almost need to adopt a very different strategy. I mean, you know better than what I would, but you need to adopt a different engagement strategy, which is, not where video interviewing then may not be as relevant.
Okay. Notwithstanding, we do phone screening, and so I think my sense is that the more this type of technology is going to be accepted at that lower and middle level, the more likely it's going to be that it's going to creep up into some higher end over time. Let's flip it from the recruiter-employer perspective to the user experience. What things should a person going through a pre-interview video experience do? What should they do to prepare ahead of time?
So I think one of the key things to recognize is that, and the key word in any process is interview. So what you're looking to do here as a candidate is demonstrate your skill sets or the value that you can bring to an organization. So just because it's on video, it actually doesn't change too many of the dynamics. Making sure that you're dressed appropriately, making sure that you've got good eye contact, make sure that you're in a room that doesn't have your dog in the corner, or you've got kids, so a quiet area. Treating it with the respect that you would give a face-to-face interview, I think, is really, really important.
So what would you say in terms of what works best? I mean, here you are, you and I both got dark outfits with light backgrounds. For those of you who are watching this, what tips, when you're saying dressed appropriately, what would you say would be important there for a video interview?
I think it's always, you do need to take into consideration the role. However, my view is always that if you are presenting for an interview, at the very least a shirt, like you would, shirt or tie, I think always looks great. Making sure that your background is, like yourself, either there's a screen behind it or you're in an appropriate setting. Again, it's just a reflection of how you're perceiving or the effort that you're making in relation to the interview. Small things like making sure your laptop's charged, your mouse is working, your screen is on correctly, it's not too dark or bright, your volume is working. They're all little things that make a huge impact on the delivery of the video. And the key thing actually to remember, and probably the differentiating point, is your video interview will probably be viewed by a number of parties. So you'll get feedback, because your video interview can be shared and will be used as a collaboration tool within the recruitment team. Often more than 2 or 3 people will see your video, whereas in face-to-face it's just the reaction of the individuals that are in front of you.
Right. Okay. Importantly too, I mean, before Saurabh and I recorded this, his washing machine was on. I had somebody near me doing some garden vacuuming. So this is work from home environment. Notwithstanding, what we're trying to do is we'd be recommending that people look to minimise what happens, but there's that randomness of working from home. But the things that are controllable are your environments, that you look good, you've got lighting that's important, make sure that your headphones are on, your device batteries are okay, things are plugged, your computer is plugged in, so you're not running out of battery, and that you got some water in case you get nervous, anything on those particular lines. They're the tips.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And the one actually that I don't see that often, but is really important is also to smile. And sometimes you get so nervous when you're, particularly in an interview, you're just so focused on answering the question that you forget to do, that most basic human interaction, which is smiling and being approachable. So yeah, if you can do that, then I think straight away someone from the other end can start to build a bit of a rapport with you, which is important.
Yeah, it's great. Okay, and some of the mistakes you've seen?
So really the mistakes are, it's exactly some of those things that you said. Make sure you're not in the right environment. Common one that we've seen is an interview that's conducted in the bedroom and the bed's not made.
Okay.
Wearing, a singlet, for example, in preparation for the video. So again, it just doesn't come across well. But it's the picture and sound quality which is also really important, because again, if there's any miscommunication or if there's interference in the internet connection or in the camera and sound quality, then it does impact the quality of your interview. So we do give, as part of our platform, we give you the opportunity to do a practice question. Just make sure that it's all in line with what you would expect. But yeah, nonetheless, it's always best to try and do whatever you can to minimize or mitigate the risk of these things occurring.
Okay, so for any people who are applying for neat and tidy or attention to detail, just make sure that if you are doing it from your bedroom, that the bed's made at least. So, which is great. Okay, so I think it's probably a good thing for us to be able to just show people what the platform looks like. Now, for those of you who are on purely on audio, what we'll have is we'll have a link to this presentation in the show notes, and also probably any resources that Saurabh is happy to share on this side of things. But let's move to a presentation of what Viddi's like, especially, Saurabh, from a user's perspective to start off with.
Okay, so typically what happens is that the candidate will receive an email invitation to register and to perform the video interview. And when you log in, you will have a list of all of the roles you've been invited for. And this then will actually identify the company and then the role, and you can then get started. I'll start my process. And really what this looks to do is take you through that initial step before you start your actual interview. So you'll see the number of questions, how long you have to answer them. But before you start, we try and ensure that you can do a camera and sound test. So this is just really to try and mitigate that, one of those risks that we identified previously.
Should say there, make your bed.
Make your bed. Yeah, that's right. So we've given them some tips. Clean your camera, choose a quiet location, take a deep breath and relax. Maybe we should add make your bed, but this is really just to try and give the candidate an opportunity to get used to the platform, but still take them through step by step. So the objective here, as with all tech, is they don't need to go through any training. They just need to follow the prompts and they'll be able to complete their interview. And if I now allow access, this will now take me through a practice question. I'll click through. I'll be able to say whatever I want. I can check my background, my volume, and so forth. And if I'm happy with it, I can save it. But before I commence my interview, I'll click through. I'll be able to say whatever I want. I can check my background. I can make sure that it actually is, the right volume and the camera set out correctly. If I'm not happy with it, I can record again and I can continue to play around with it until I am happy. Otherwise, I can just begin my interview. Each interview has a time limit, and then the questions will come up as you click through. Why do I have my role in finance? I can answer. You've got a time limit that's set there by the recruiter. And if I finish prior to, you'll then just move to the next question.
Fantastic. And so that just shows the people who are going through that clearly you've got 3 questions on the right-hand side. Now that you've done that, they've got question 2, question 3, and so on. So in this situation, there are 3 questions, and it gives a really nice idea about what the experience is. So assuming that that's the case, then really it's showing, Saurabh, that there's no training that's needed, that it works really easily for somebody to be able to just click on the link and practice and then basically go for it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the advantage is it's actually device responsive. So if you are on an iPhone, or if you're on a tablet, or if you're on your PC like I was today, you can actually conduct the interview and it's responsive to the device you're on.
And would you recommend to people who are applying for jobs a preferred device?
Yeah, our recommendation is always for it to be on either a tablet or a PC. But you do recognize, and again, the mobile devices these days have changed as well. So you do have flexibility to have a stand. There is technology to allow you to still perform, at the same level as you would on a tablet or PC. But it's important just to take that into consideration, particularly if you're using a mobile device.
And that's great, good tips. And Sarah, how about from an employer's perspective, if they were going to be loading Viddi up for asking pre-interview questions, so an employer or a recruiter?
I'm going to log in as a recruiter, and you'll see here that I just finished my interview there. So this was the finance manager role. I've got an inbox here. I'll click through, and my interviews have now come through. So as a recruiter, I can now review this at my own discretion. I can review it on any kind of device. So again, this is device responsive. You can leave a comment here, score the candidate, and then you can also share the candidate. So you can share that with other individuals in the organization. Again, just to allow for a bit more collaboration from your end. But if you were to create a vacancy, again, the process is very, very straightforward. So basically nice big buttons here to take you through. Well, our objective here really was to try and make this as streamlined as possible. So again, you can see that the buttons, it's very clear what the next steps are, or the objective is to try and make it as clear as possible. You add your new questions, and if you were to skills, you can enter in a time limit, add that to the interview. You can edit the invitation. So this is the invitation that will then get sent out to candidates. And then you can also add candidates. And if I just enter in myself, send the invitations, that invitation has now been sent. So the process to actually send your list of questions can be done from a recruiter's perspective, can be set up and sent out to candidates within 5 minutes.
Fantastic. And there's a question library as well. Do you want to just show?
There's a question library here, which you can refer to. You can refer to these questions here, but when you're creating the interview, you can also then pick questions from the library. So you can automatically pick them either based on the question or based on a tag that you've set on the question. So if I look here, we've got various tags here. So if you've got a particular role, or you can set a tag on that basis. So any future roles, you can then just go and pick up the same questions. You don't need to re-enter them.
And the nice thing about this is that it's whether it's from the applicant side or from the employer/recruiter side of things, it's just a very, very intuitive, simple platform that has some real time-saving benefits. So really well done there. I think that's great. Let me ask you, Sarah, I think it's a fantastic piece of technology, and I'm convinced that there's some real upside for you in terms of the marketing opportunity, or the market opportunity. Let me also just say from an applicant perspective, because from my business, I get to see literally over each year hundreds of people moving through from one job and then applying for others. So this type of technology is going to end up becoming increasingly prevalent. What we've learned is that the technology is at the moment probably most suitable for high volume roles and up to middle management. But we've talked about the likelihood of this as the acceptance of this really takes hold, that's going to be increasingly something where people even in more senior roles are going to be expected to at least have a pre-interview. People are time poor, and technology becomes increasingly prevalent itself. So, which is great. Let me ask you, what's the best way of people getting in touch with you?
Best way to contact our website is www.viddi.com.au. But if people are more than happy to respond to people, you can email me directly on saurabh@viddi.com.au. And yeah, happy to take you through a demo. We can set up free trials. There's again, the objective here really is to try and see whether it can be a tech that's useful to your process. And that free trial then really allows for that to occur, no obligations, and then you can form a basis on, or form a view, on whether or not the tech is useful.
Okay, great. And what we'll do is we'll also have those contacts in the show notes. People can get to see that. Saurabh, I want to thank you very much for a really interesting overview about what pre-interview videos are all about. And I'd like to have you back on the show to talk further about applicant tracking systems. I think that would be a really interesting thing, again, for people to be able to understand what happens in terms of a recruiter's experience or an employer's experience that has an applicant tracking system when their CVs are lodged. I look forward to having you back on, but I want to just thank you so much again for your time. And hopefully all of you have got something out of today and good food for thought about what it takes to really win at pre-interviewing in today's increasingly tech environment. Saurabh, thanks so much for all of that.
Thank you for listening to the Start Strong, Finish Strong podcast. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Share the podcast with your teams, and of course, we'd love you to leave a comment or review.